Hello, everyone, and welcome to the April online edition of Carmine Street Magics, which will be the closing reading of the online season, since our next two readings will be at the Jefferson Market Library. So very excited to welcome our three readers today, Christopher Childers, Brandon Courtney, and Leslie Monsour, and of course, very much looking forward to the open mic as well. And we are going to start with the open mic, and our first open mic reader will be Anne Drysdale. Anne, welcome.
Thank you, Antoine. I will give you a bit of background to the poem I'm going to read. I need to confirm that I did, as I promised, I treated myself to Chris's book. And I've been lost in it since it arrived. The world of classical literature has always been part of my life, and I was happy to find Praxilla in it. Praxilla was the source of the title of my first poetry collection. It's called The Turn of the Cucumber, and it was her cucumber, and I seized it like a baton for a relay race, and I ran with it. I've always loved the poetry of Catullus, and I was delighted to find so much of it in Chris's book. But the poem I'm going to read is based on one that doesn't seem to appear, or maybe I just haven't found it yet. It's number 32, where the randy poet addresses a woman other than his beloved Lesbia, asking her to get ready for a visit from a man who's just finished a really good lunch, and he's eager to engage with her in the business for which his equipment is already well risen. He calls her Ipsitilla, and there's been a good deal of scholarly debate about who this woman might have been. But I just think of her as a combination of ipsa et illa, she, her, that woman. And I have a great deal of sympathy with her situation. Don't ask. This poem is her reply to Catullus's proposal. The Love Song of Ipsitilla. Oh, Mr. Catullus, I love you so dearly, and yours is the name I cry out in the night. But you don't ever think of me, do you? Not really. I'm out of your mind when I'm out of your sight. Yet when I'm with you, I find I can nearly believe you are truly my refuge and rock. Alone, I can see it remarkably clearly. I only exist when I'm kissing your cock. And when on a whim you decide to come to me, you slip me a wink as you enter the yard. But when you're with her, you look past me and through me. And that's something else I find terribly hard. You call me and tell me you want to be with me. You're feeling inspired and you need to confer. Something to show me and something to give me. Your mind is on me, but your heart is with her. Yet, Mr. Catullus, although you abuse me, in spite of the hurt and the hate and the pain, I know in my heart that however you use me, the next time you knock, I will fuck you again.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, our next reader is John Foy.
Thanks for having us all here. It's an honor to be reading with Chris and Brandon and Leslie. And I will read a poem. It's called My Love of Poetry. I remember now, I don't know why, in fourth grade, I think it was, I called a kid a douchebag. His name was Howard Hutchinson. He ran to tell the teacher that I had called him a douchebag. The teacher, Mrs. Nathan, promptly came to talk to me in the harshest possible terms and asked me why I had called him a douchebag. Because he looks like one, I said, although back then I didn't know what a douchebag was. I did, though, like the sound of it. Detention was my just reward. In point of fact, He wasn't that objectionable, but the frisson of douchebag, a sonic equivalence I could not deny, was so exact given what I saw that I gave in, alas, to the dark allure of accuracy. And thus began my love of poetry. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Wow, very provocative start of the open mic. Masterful poems. That's really, really awesome. But wow. Okay, next up is Robbi Nestor.
Hi, I don't think I've read this one here. It's called Ancestors. My ancestors became adept at leaving, traveling by ship, sinking low in dark green winter waves, subsisting on shreds of over-salted herring. They learned new languages, took on different names, yet carried with them the tales and histories that made them who they were. I imagine that they sang on the trip over, spinning wild fables in the ship's dark hold. But later, they had to go again. Each sanctuary gave way to the next. Even knowing what they knew, they hoped there would someday come an end to leaving.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Robbi.
You're welcome.
Our next open mic reader will be David M. Katz.
Thank you, Anton. This week I had the thrill of receiving the proofs for my next book, my new book, which is called The Biographer, and so you see it, from Dos Madres Press, should be out before the end of the month. I'll read a short poem from the book. It's a very early memory. The altitude. I walked beside my father's giant leg, hip high, no more than 5. His head and hat were in the sky. Suddenly, I pitched forward like a ship, the mica chips and concrete hurling up at me before my arm grew taut. My father's hand had held me back from falling, though he didn't seem to notice, and we took a slow next step. My eyes rose up and saw, beneath his hat, a jaw, a nose, and something like a smile. There may have been a raincoat and some rain. Behind this scene, upon this screen, I see the start of all I've come to think of him. The New York City street surrounding us, the fences and gray spaces, autumn rain, the firmness of his hand, the altitude I'd have to climb before I knew the man.
Thank you very much, David. And congratulations on the book being almost out. And I will be saying this to our feature readers and to folks a number of times throughout the reading, but please feel free to post if there is like a preview, there's a pre-order link, or just please post links to your books in the chat so that folks can order them. Our next reader is Austin Allen.
It's good to see everyone. Anton, thank you for hosting as always. I'm going to read a poem that's a sonnet that came out in Image Journal, the recently dead and resurrected Image Journal. We're glad that it's back. This is called Complaint of a Brain in a Jar, and I think the title is self-explanatory. It's a monologue from the perspective of a brain that has been kept alive by scientists or experimenters in a jar. Complaint of a brain in a jar. It isn't sight or sound or taste I've missed the most. I'd been deprived of each before, but routine, trusty touch, which we ignore promiscuously, the way my two lips kissed each other and my tongue lolled on its bed, pressures of hair on scalp, ribs on the inner wall of my chest. I crave those more than dinner even, or sex. Tubed fluids keep me fed. Electrodes keep my blood flow as banal, correct, and calm as my experimenters. A few last cells in shriveled pleasure centers want to want more, but lack the wherewithal. To hell with them. They always did come first. To feel my throat at all is all my thirst. Thanks.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you. Well, it is now my pleasure to introduce our first feature reader, Christopher Childers. Christopher Childers is the author of the Penguin Book of Greek and Latin Lyric Verse, which just came out about 10 days ago on March 28th. So congratulations. And this was a book that was 14 years in the making. I know that some of you have already received the copy. He has received an NEA Translators Fellowship and published in venues including the Canyon Review, the Yale Review, Agni, Literary Matters, and Smartish Space. His poem Miasma is forthcoming from Best American Poetry 2023, which was edited by Mary Jo Salter. He lives in Baltimore and teaches Latin at the Gilman School. Welcome, Christopher Childers.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Anton, and everybody else for coming. It's a real pleasure to see so many familiar faces, so many poets I admire, and to be with Leslie and Brandon is a fantastic honor. Yes, the book I'm reading from, which we already saw it, Anne Drysdale, and thank you for that amazing Ipsatilla poem. I did not include Catullus. You said I think it's 32, and I did translate it. I translated a lot more poems than ended up making it into this book, but maybe a complete Catullus will be forthcoming at some point. But this is the Penguin Book of Greek and Latin Lyric Verse. It did probably take me 14 years. It took so long, actually, that the book itself is a bit confused as to how long it took. In one place, the book says over 10 years. In another place, it says 13. I started in 2010. It's now 2024. So 14 is going to be the number. But you can, I guess, order it from Amazon. It'll ship from the UK, I believe. But it seems I would paste the link, but the link is really something horrible looking. So I'm sure you can just find it if you are interested, or drop me a line on Facebook or contact Anton and give you my info if you want me to send you an inscribed copy. I'm buying up copies and mailing some out, so I'd be happy to do that. I was going to, in honor of tomorrow's big event, the Eclipse poem is a subgenre of Greek poetry. There are many subgenres. I seem to have two Eclipse poems in the book. So I'll start with one example from Archilochus, who is also the first poet in the book. No more surprises now, no stunning miracles, no thought unthinkable, since heaven's father Zeus saw fit to blot the midday with sheer midnight, overshadowing the sun. And with that shadow, fear and trembling fell on everyone. From now on, no occurrences, no worries or wild hopes are past belief. From now on, there's no call for shock or wonder, not if you see the dolphins crop the mountains and treetops, while woodland creatures graze each oceanic glen and copse, the dolphin's home, and frisk with pleasure through the breakers' thunder. Apparently, that is actually a father who is annoyed at the match that his daughter has made, at least according to Aristotle, who quotes the poem, but you can't tell from the text itself. The other eclipse poem in the book is by Pindar. It is from the ninth Paean. So this would have been a poem sung and danced in honor of Apollo at Thebes by the Isthmus River. And he's trying to figure out what horrible disaster the eclipse might portend for mankind. So this is the excerpt of the ninth Paean, which is in the book. Mother of vision, beam of the sun, what have you, distant seer, done, O highest of stars, who have found a way to hide in the depths of the day? Why have you plunged into helpless night, wisdom's road, and all human might, as you steal swiftly out of sight? Are you foreshadowing some dark surprise? By Zeus, I pray, swift charioteer, that now somehow you quell this universal fear. O lady, let it harmlessly allude to Thebes' greater good. But what do you mean? Is it some new war, or the crops collapse, or a blizzard more brutal than words, or civilian gore besmirching the city, or the huge outpouring of ocean rising to swamp the plain, each field congealed with ice, or a summer torrential with rain? Or will you flood the planet and replace mankind with some new race? Another poet whom we are told wrote eclipse poems, though they do not survive, is Mimnermus, the archaic elegist. And this is not his eclipse poem, but it's another poem of his. Mimnermus, fragment 2. We are like leaves born in the teeming spring, basking in sunlight, swiftly burgeoning. Like them, for an arm's length of time, we live happy and young, and what the gods will give we don't suspect. Presences wrapped in gloom are always near, one holding out the doom of age, another death. And youth won't last. Its fruit, like one day's worth of sun, dies fast. And when the season dwindles and is gone, it's better being dead than living on. For troubles swarm the heart. One man will blow his savings and lose everything but woe. Another man wants children most of all, and wanting them goes down to Hades' hall. Disease destroys a third. For Zeus the king gives everyone a share of suffering. So cheery stuff from Mimnermus, the archaic elegist, and the kind of thing in general that archaic poets tended to say about life. The book, I might mention, is divided into 4 sections. The archaic period, which goes up to 479, about 8th century BC up to 479, which is the Battle of Plataea, when the Greeks won the Persian War. The classical period, which is kind of a decadent period for lyric, goes to the death of Alexander in 323. Then there is a post-classical Greek lyric period, which extends beyond the end of the Hellenistic period with the death of Cleopatra in 30 and goes into the Roman period. And whereas the Roman poetry starts in this with Catullus, so mid-1st century, and carries to the death of Martial. And one thing that hopefully you'll get from the book, if you spend some time with its introductory materials as well as the poems, is a sense of the argument it's making about the growth and development of literature out of the song culture of archaic Greece to a more sort of book page culture of Alexandria, the Hellenistic period, and into a really sort of a competitive and emulative or translation-based Roman literary culture, since Roman literature actually has its beginnings in the 2nd, 3rd century in Campania with translations from Greek. So maybe I can give a little bit of a sense of the influence of the Greek poetry on the Latin poetry. And that's a big part of, I think, the rationale behind including both of them in a single book. I'm going to go to Hellenistic poetry briefly. Epigrams tend to be the characteristic form of Hellenistic poetry. And this is a very famous one by Callimachus on the death of his friend, the poet Heraclitus, not the pre-Socratic philosopher. When I heard, Heraclitus, you were dead, I thought of all the suns we talked to bed those nights, and the tears came. Dear guest, I know that you were ashes long and long ago, and yet your nightingales are singing still. Death kills all things, but them he cannot kill. I also, if I can find it, would like to read a nice little thing by Antipholus of Byzantium. This is another Hellenistic epigram. Just let me sleep in the stern on a strawy bed while raindrops drum the awning overhead and fire licks up through the hearthstones where the kettle pops and crackles noise and air, while I observe the deckhand slice the meat, then sit at a plank above the bridge and eat. And so it happened. Sea winds soughing, give and take. The common folk know how to live. I might read, if I had more time, I would be likely to read a pet epitaph or two to prepare this one of Catullus's, since this is a Hellenistic genre, epitaphs on the death of pets, which Catullus picks up with his elegy for Lesbia's sparrow. I'm going to avoid reading any of his more randy work, even despite what we heard earlier, because I don't know, I'm looking for a job. I'm moving to LA, and I don't necessarily want to have my face on the internet saying some of the things that the poets in this book say. But this one is clean enough. Catullus 3 for Lesbia's sparrow. Weep, you Venuses and Cupids, dishes and dreamboats, start weeping. My sweetheart's sparrow is dropped dead. Her sparrow, her most favorite baby, that she loved more than anything. This pet, so smoothly tuneful, knew her better than she knew her mother. Never hopping off her lap, it flitted this way, flitted that, cheeping to her alone. But now it skips and pecks the path of shadows to a dark cage no bird has flown. But you be damned, dread maw of hell, devourer of the beautiful. You stole a pretty pet, my sparrow. It's your fault now that there's no keeping my sweetheart's puffy eyes from weeping. And perhaps, yes, I think I'm running up to the end here. So I suppose I will land on, well, I'll end on this one. This is actually the first poem I ever translated that's in this book. And it's a beautiful poem for spring. It was A.E. Housman's favorite poem, Ode of Horace. And yeah, I think that's maybe the thing to say about it. It's Ode 4-7, I believe. And sure, so this is what I'll close on. And thank you again for coming and for hosting me. The snows have fled. Meadows put on their blooms and trees their leafy clothes. The newborn earth resumes her ancient changes. The river, sinking, flows in its old repose. The nymphs and sister graces dare to dance bare in the playful wind. The hour's flashing glance warns not to hope for more than life will lend. This too shall end. Mild zephyrs melt the cold. Bold summer chases quickening spring to fall into the chill embraces of apple-bearing autumn, till winter's paw stifles all. Yet swiftly cycling moons can still repair the light heaven has lost. But we, when we cross where Tullus, Ancus, and Aeneas crossed, are darkness, dust. Who knows if the lofty gods will add tomorrow to the sum of days you're here? love the time you borrow. What you spend yourself, you need not spare a grasping air. Yes, we'll go down, and strict minus allot us our judgment and our place. No speeches then, Torquatus, no godliness, no aristocratic race will buy us grace. Diana does not save inviolate Hippolytus who fell, nor can Theseus split the chains which bind Pirithous to dwell, forgetful in hell. Thanks.
Wow, thank you so very much, Chris. This is amazing, and I hope that everyone orders a copy. You know, the Penguin Book of Greek and Latin lyric verse. What a fantastic achievement, and I really look forward to digging into it soon. And yes, please order copies. And thank you so much for reading with us. This was really, really fantastic. Please unmute yourselves so we can applaud and express our appreciation.
Magnificent, Chris.
Gorgeous.
Thank you.
Really tremendous.
Yes. Yes. Clear as a bell.
Yes, yes, indeed. All right, well, thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. And we're gonna continue with the open mic. I'm gonna mute everyone again. And our next open mic reader is Gerald Wagoner.
Hello, Antoine and everyone. I have just a little background on the poem. It's like a lot. It's from my youth. And there was a time when newspapers had morning editions and then they had evening editions. And if you were in the state of Montana and you produced an evening edition or a morning edition, you had to send people out in cars all over to deliver the physical papers to the little paper boys who took care of them. I was one of those little paper boys. This is a poem about the guy in the car. What are the rules for dread? The land was vast and treeless. The land was hard kernel, winter wheat. A man crouched in a beetle. The man was wan and worn. The man was unshaven. The man was unmarried. The man clutched the wheel of his gray beetle. The man was doing it one more time. The man had packed the bug with 6 bundles of orange-tinted newspapers, signature color of the Great Falls Leader, the Tribune's evening edition. It was mid-afternoon. The sun would soon set. It was mid-afternoon. He'd be home before dark. It was fog like wool. It was rain like vengeance. It was a day so clear, the Rockies so near, it could make a body cry. It was blinding, wind-driven snow. It was the cold no car heater can beat. It was 247 miles round trip. It was 6 days a week. It was only one radio station. It was Cut Bank, last stop. It was collection day. The man got a nickel for each dime paper. It was supposed to be 3 cents. The man in the bug said, we wouldn't know. The man in the bug said, you can't miss what we never had. 2 pennies here, 2 pennies there. The man knew it wasn't enough, but it sort of made him feel square.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you very much. And next up is Marjorie Maddox.
Okay, this is also a book coming out by the end of the month, a really lighthearted book. How can I look it up when I don't know how it's spelled? All about spelling mnemonics and grammar tricks. So I will just read one of these. The way to remember how to spell separate, as you all know, is there is a rat in the middle of separate. And here's the graphic that goes with it. There is a rat in the middle of separate. not just his teeth as pointed as before test pencils, but his entire seamy body gleams with longing for the lost spelling bee, its airborne script intercepted by the evolved, phonetically abused and chomping pterodactyl, who took the tiny sting like a man sucking on sore taste buds and flew off to a museum to sulk. The rat's tail snaps out like nunchucks, reels in the red meat of the rational, the tough but tenuous topic sentences tied together just so with brown paper and transitions, but no address. Undeliverable, stamped across the letters before they're tossed in this garbage, In this garbage can of sound and lost vowels, there must be, the rat sneers, bones worth chewing, homonyms half digested, picked over and passed on by spelling checkers. And he digs deeper into the pile of mismatched prefixes, misspelled banana peels. He digs deeper into the tunnels of proclaimed typos. He digs deeper, sniffing, 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 daydreaming always of Limburger, accurately spelled. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marjorie. And also please feel free to link to a pre-order page if you have one. Congratulations on the book, on the forthcoming book. It is now my pleasure to introduce our second feature reader. Brandon Courtney is a disabled veteran of Operation Enduring Freedom and the author of This Sisyphus, which came out from Yes Yes Books in 2019, as well as Rooms for Rent in the Burning City from Sparkwheel Press, The Grief Muscles from the Sheepmeadow Press, and the chapbook Inadequate Grave, which also came out from Yes Yes Books. He's received fellowships and scholarships from the Sewanee Writers Conference, Colgate University, Juniper Summer Writers Institute, and Seaside Writers Conference. His poetry appears or is forthcoming in Best New Poets 2009, Tin House, Boston Review, Guernica, Memorials, The Progressive, and American Literary Review. And he is currently writing a hybrid experimental memoir. Welcome, Brandon Courtney.
Thank you so much for the introduction. As it states, this doesn't have a title yet. I'm writing this memoir, which I will not bore you with the details, but it's a lot of stuff going into it, and at this point there's no real structure. It's just kind of a nebulous thing. So this is a portion of that kind of gels together in a way, and it begins with a sentence with a quote from William Goss. And a little background: my mother died in 2019 on the operating table. She was a nurse at the same hospital, and over the years, about 3 years later, my family was part of a lawsuit against the hospital. We went to trial, things like that. So this is kind of this touches on that a bit. I can't stop rhyming, I think, is the problem. So this is in memoir form, but it rhymes. So it doesn't have a title. It's just untitled. And this is the quote: "Writing, not writing, twin terrors. Putting one's mother into words. It may have been easier to put her in the grave. A mother, outpatient surgery, hospital bed and recovery room where my father patiently waits for her failing kidneys to drink the radioactive isotopes so the surgeon knows exactly where to place the port for home dialysis. In red, he has initialed where scalpels plunge, where to circle iodine. Oxygen hose in blood pressure cuff, an anesthesiologist to count backwards from 10. Lights dim, except for the satellite lamp in orbit around her stomach. The walls sigh as she stretches latex gloves over fingers and palms. The procedure begins the alarms, a den among custodians polishing and waxing linoleum. Coffin flies come home. Alarms blare, sirens expose codes of every color. Green, yellow, that idiot siren meant for my mother. Blue. A different area code appears on my screen, a call across state lines. My sister, too long a pause, a gasp to gather enough breath to say into her phone, she's gone. A walk upstairs to wake my sleeping wife, she's gone, I say. My mother died in the hospital where she was born. So again, very cheerful stuff. This next part is an experience of me reading her autopsy reports, of which I did. They were both in the trial itself, but I also read them independently. So this is kind of my experience with that. What I found fascinating with the autopsy was this phrase that was repeated, which was she was received. And it was this strange way of putting it, right? This very negative construction. And so I use that as part of that. So this is her autopsy. The object received and the act of receiving are fundamental. So she was received in white, the color of crest and alkali. By hand, she was so crudely numbered with string and blue pen. Even the body bag was colored dirty albumin. She wore a hospital wristlet and in black lettering the squat script of her name. She was received naked, her jaw and extremities, it says, in full rigor, her lividity red. Where blood gathers, rot begins. She was cold to the touch, was so crudely filed and refrigerated. The face stiffens first. The uterus in soil is the last to decompose. She was received with curly blonde hair, with symmetric but scanty lashes. Her skull was unremarkable. Her curls smelled like lotion. Her dreams were kept beneath the surface of her peeled back scalp. She was received with compatible eyes, blue, gray. Her pupils were wide, blown apart by some unseen light, received as she was with lids wide open, her tongue clenched between her teeth, received soft in the abdomen. She was received with red acrylic nails, with pink paint on well-trimmed toes, received with liver spots and stretch marks, multiple, it says, received with an ankle tattoo, which read BRMA. I know her by shape, her many ditches and danes. I know my mother by what she is not. Sharpened graphite, its pink eraser opposite the name so easily forgotten, the date. I know her as a hacksaw knows its massacre. She was received with cesarean scars, spider veins, purple bruises pooled behind her knuckles. Mother, I am no Caesar. She was received with accordion hose in the right nares, intubated, secured with orange tape. She was received with 3 incisions covered in gauze, with EKG pads glued below her heart. A salmon-colored wound, leeward wind, and Eberman crawling up an echelon thin, cotton in her elbows, crooks to hide dialysis tracks. My mother received a khaki tag knotted around her right great toe. Her eyes were brandished orange and brown, broken vessels, a sentry at the gate. They opened her in a Y. Her 2 breasts parted. She was torn in half. Her sternum a deadbolt thrown back into its catch. From the 1st to the 4th on the left and the 1st to the 5th on her right, her ribs were broken by the crush of resuscitation. An hour. an hour. Her brain weighed 1,250 grams. Her heart, 561. She was received with deposits of glistening fat. The leaflets of her heart were thick. The cordae were kite strings, snakes around the staff. Her lungs weighed 797 grams and 896 grams, respectively, and when cut, bled through red and pink. She was received with 40 years of cigarette smoke. She was received with emphysema, silver shards throughout her bridge work. Her liver weighed 2,051 grams when lifted to the scale. Her body leavened and lilted, mold, then pestled with palms and lips, and finally to the stretcher, to the stove, to the basement of the urn. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. It is hard to even say anything. That is really devastating and absolutely powerful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to read that and, share the space. I do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for reading it. Please, everyone, unmute yourself so we can applaud and thank Brandon.
Thank you.
It's really, really amazing.
Thank you.
I know her as a hacksaw knows it's massacre. I wrote that down. But amazing work. Thank you so much for reading it.
Thank you.
And our next open mic reader is our Nemo Hill.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Seems like everybody has a book coming out this month, so I'll jump on the bandwagon. Should be out within a couple of weeks from Dos Madres, and I'm going to read an excerpt from it. It's House Song number 3. Point Batiste, Dominica, 1985. That brute midwinter we fled further south. I showered in the garden's open mouth and dined on not quite cool and not yet warm tree-ripened mangoes harvested each dawn, on buoyant green bananas curved like boats, and once on the roasted testicles of goats. Delighted by the first few whir-winged blurs of through the glassless window wind-launched birds, we latched all shutters open day and night, secured our shelter in the path of flight, and slept with stars on firefly-stitched bedding beneath sheer drapes of pale green nylon netting. Those tents would breathe with breezes in the dark, each bush a whispered lesson in the art of constant trespass. Rested, trade wind schooled, we spent one lonely burning afternoon in a fenceless orchard, listening to the sound of heavy grapefruits thumping on the ground. Impetuous, you'd burned your upper lip on unknown berries. Coral cut, I'd slipped from rocks a sudden tide turns wave crests swept. We both collapsed on shore, and as we slept, our rucksack, unattended, thinned by theft, soon yielded up what little we had left. We'd traded nesting tacks for smoke and axe, and peeled long strips of dead skin from our backs. And on the day we left, as we packed our clothes, from closets we'd left blithely unenclosed, great clouds of now disturbed mosquitoes rose, buzzing farewell oratorios. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nemo, and congratulations
Thanks.
on the upcoming book. Next up is Dolores, Hayden.
Thank you, Anton. My title is a line from a Philip Larkin's poem, Money. I listen to money singing. Consolidate the purple properties or diversify. 5 gleeful children, Harry, Bully, and bankrupt friends, each one aware the richest player wins. Penciling profit versus cost, counting their cash. The children do the arithmetic on every turn. Thimble and Shoe are stuck in jail, throwing the dice for doubles. Flatiron borrows on his Baltic lot to buy the Reading Railroad. The racing car roars right past Go, picks up 2 bills, while the hat raises her Park Place rent for a one-night stay in a ritzy red hotel. Here comes the Shoe and Thimble too. They're out of jail, but Thimble's riding the Reading now, complaining Flatiron's fare will finish her. And here comes Bank. He writes the mortgages. He hustles your ascent and auctions your fall, transacts the practical and volatile business of capital. Money sings. And here comes Mr. Monopoly. He's stepping out in ancient spatterdashers, wearing top hat and morning coat, twirling a cane, puffing a fat cigar, performing wealth as operatic solo. Money hums. Dealing in real estate, he's cruel, he's kind. He doles out taxes, fines, and legacies. In a mood, he might dispatch a player to jail or get them out of jail free. On a chance, he's whimsical until he's mean, until he's monopoly capital again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dolores. And it's great to hear you and to see you again. Hopefully you join us again. We have one more open mic reader before the last feature. And the last open mic reader is Harvey, Soss.
Okay, Anton, you had indicated when last I saw you earlier in the week that you thought that I should read the poem that I had read at Bowery. So I guess I will, also with apologies to Anne, who heard it yesterday. And after Brandon's work, I guess, sort of put me in the mood. Whereas his situation was relatively recent, mine was something like 45 years ago. And it took me most of that time to be able to address it. It's called, It's Not Your Fault. Downwind of Stern's pickle factory, mother melted. Butter in a frying pan, not yet 65. There's nothing you or I could have done about it, husband or son. She was no toddler on training blocks to require one of us to call and ride shotgun. After convalescence and post-surgical depression, she insisted on going out alone. Who knew, driving unaccompanied those few fateful miles to the mall? Neither of us could have known. How could we that an aerosol can from the Stop and Shop, Pam, hairspray, a family-sized spritzer of SPF 100 suntan lotion, or as may hereafter be determined by forensics, would grow ever more heated on the passenger seat, soaking up summer sun until it burst, going all kablooey nova, turning luminous housewife into a flambeau, exploding.
Oh my God.
Exploding without warning, making a funeral pyre of the car and her with its consumptive fire. While talking heads debated global warming on the radio, a seer could not have foreseen this end. Neither you nor I could have foreseen this end. And of course, in the end, neither of us did. I don't recall the make or model, probably Chevy or Olds, as you proudly allowed only fresh off the lot Detroiters with NASA-worthy gizmos in the driveway. Made in America being the way to go. Or so hand over heart you swore, had you been there helpless where she stalled and burned, fumbling, I suspect, at her seatbelt, you might have rethought your position on American design, General Motors, Ford, Daimler, Chrysler, our big three car makers, those made in America, two tough locks and windows, standing firm against the efforts of sooty-faced good Samaritans to break her out of the screaming car. Efforts that failed so miserably when safety glass, once touted as a selling point, proved all too resistant to their frenzied fists. It's not your fault they could not save her any more, I must and do believe, than it is mine. Mother, wife, survivor of 2 open heart surgeries, perhaps she just could not be saved. It's not as if we didn't care. For my part, after some robo-detective dialed to say my father needed me, I thought, as you must have done, if only I could have been there, I would have kicked, punched, hammered that motherfucking glass to shards and fetched her for you from the fire to rise phoenix-like in her accustomed place at the dinner table, to serve pfannkuchen and chicken paprika, followed by a slice of the best chocolate babka. And if the glass proved stronger even than adrenaline born of breast milk, I would have blessed her as a son might against the coming darkness of our natural night, and said for all of us, for all who knew and loved her, but for you, we would be nothing, less than nothing, certainly my sisters and I. Clump clay animated by your hands and care. A mother to put Gaia's fashioning of the Titans, the Cyclopes, to shame. All praise to you then for shaping us this way. Never was there a ceramicist with so deft a touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Harvey. Thank you for reading that. Thank you. Okay. I'm now going to introduce our last feature reader, Leslie Monsour. Born in Los Angeles, Leslie Monsour was raised in Mexico City, Chicago, and Panama. She's the author of The Alarming Beauty of the Sky and several chapbooks, as well as the Colosseum Critical Introduction to Rina P. Espaillat. Her poems, essays, and translations appear in such journals as Poetry, Able Muse, Light, Metsukamin, Alabama Literary Review, First Things, Literary Matters, The Dark Horse, and the Galway Review, as well as various anthologies ranging from California poetry from the gold rush to the present, all the way to last year's Outer Space, for which we actually did a special Carmine Street Magics reading last year. The recipient of 5 Pushcart Prize nominations and an NEA Fellowship, Leslie currently resides in Los Angeles amid the echoes of Laurel Canyon. Please help me welcome Leslie Monsour.
Oh, thank you so much, Anton and Wendy, for inviting me today. It's been a real pleasure to hear everybody, and Chris and Brandon, Billy. It's a privilege to read with you. Well, some of the poems have put me in the mood to read this one. It's a sonnet called Forbidding Fruit. Resigned to wheelchair life, too weak to stand, she cursed her body, calling it a hearse. The family stopped eating from her hand the day she put her mortgage in reverse. Likewise, her mood regressed from foul to worse. Restricted diet, ill-prepared and bland, the mortifying mop-ups by the nurse. She killed a kind word with a reprimand. Still, fleeting joy could take her by surprise, as when she bit into that Bartlett pear, sweet recognition danced across her eyes. Glad juice spilled down her cheek into her hair. She held the bitten fruit out like a prize that none, not one of them, wanted to share. The eclipse has been a theme today, and yes, and I have an eclipse poem in the book that Anton mentioned, Midge Goldberg's wonderful anthology. But it occurred to me that this poem is also about the sun, as well as my son, when I used to be a little league mom. And baseball is another great distraction from the madness going on here on Earth. The outfielder. There's Jesse planted in left field, a sapling in the burning sun. He looks so small and far away. A batter wields a torch-like bat above home plate, then swings and hits a solid swack while everyone thinks, homer. Panic hits the dugout floor, the fielders hurry south, and Jesse, running backwards, face to sky, arms reaching, lifts the leather mitt, a hatchling's open beak. The ball drops into sight an instant, then slips into the gullet of his glove, while heaven glows as if it swallowed its own blaze. The dust looks more like smoke as he runs in, and slowing at the chain link wire to cheers displays the smothered fire. And I want to say that the moon, we mustn't forget the role that the moon plays in eclipses. So I didn't want to leave it out today. This poem is called Clair de Lune. What is this fascination with the moon, especially in its fullest final phase? It makes a common and inconstant muse with borrowed light that gives the palest rays, inspiring platitudes and maudlin praise. It idles in the rangy eucalyptus, reclusive in its cool albino gloom. Then, like a watchman on his graveyard rounds, directs its chalky glow into our room, and Debussy emerges from his tomb. And then there is the matter of indifference. For all our fancying, the moon's a cold and lifeless satellite, outweighed and cast involuntarily into Earth's cold. It chills to silver, sunlight's borrowed gold. Yet we adore our loyal evening escort. Despite its flaws, it draws us without trying and stirs us with its hedonistic wholeness, then goes in tactful stages of goodbying, as if to teach the grace of timely dying. For a long time, I wanted to write something about the unique experience I had while living in Panama many years ago. I owned a horse and used to go on early morning rides through the tropical forest with one of the stable hands. I worked on this poem for a while, and I read it for an open mic once, and then I fiddled with it a bit more, and now it's published, so I'll read it again. There's a reference in the poem to an Emily Dickinson poem, which begins, "Someone put on this mighty show, to which without a ticket go the nations and the days." The Fifth Horseman. I once owned a tropical pony of Peruvian Paso descent, bred from those brought by murderous Pizarro to plunder the continent. The bloodline continued and flourished, evolving in fair replica as a bush horse bred mostly for pleasure throughout Central America. The stable hand's name was Edwin. A machete hung at his side. He cleared out the trail every morning before others went out on a ride. Overnight, the golden silk spiders spun orb webs a meter wide. I never rode into the forest without Edwin before me as guide. At night, they catch rat-bat and owl, man, he'd say as we rode through the trees, slicing silk with his rusted machete. In Jamaica, man, plenty of these. The place was too sultry for saddles. We used nothing but bridle and bit. Not a pad or a blanket, just horse sweat and welts. I was soon used to it. Early morning, the horses were freshest. They'd leap over culvert and log as the canopy woke with the racket of capuchin, parrot, and frog. Now and then we caught sight of the quetzal, the blending iguana and viper, and every nymphalidae butterfly of sapphire, ruby, and copper. On the floor of the softwood forest, pink ginger bloomed in the mud, and the path sometimes sank like a quicksand under puddles from yesterday's flood. But our sure-footed ponies were savvy, stepping lightly and circling around on a carpet of fern bed and grasses, while avoiding the fire ants mound, where anteaters dig for their breakfast, immune to the stinging attacks. Then the trail reached the stream and the horses would swim us across on their backs, with Edwin on guard for the caimans who lurk on the shore or afloat, while the sloth sleeps on high in the branches, and the moths lay their eggs in her coat. There she dreams of the end of her species, to the hum of the stingless bees, as they sing to the dwindling forest, how the cast has been cut with the trees, for the house has exceeded capacity, and the show's not so mighty these days. Unlike the great god of the empire, nature works in well understood ways. The prophet who wrote of the horsemen, death, pestilence, famine, and war, unknowingly left out the fifth one. Mass extinction surpasses all four. He's been picking up speed at full gallop. After 60 or so million years, neither Edwin nor I could foresee it when we rode there like two pioneers on our Panamanian ponies of Peruvian Paso descent, bred from those brought by murderous Pizarro to plunder the continent. And I think I'll read one more quick one. After all this rain we've had here in California, our garden snail population is far from extinct. It's a great challenge for gardeners. So I'd like to read this poem in honor of springtime and Poetry Month. It's written in the common measure quatrains that Emily Dickinson favored so prolifically. The Snail in the Marigold. I watched when planting marigolds, their colors all afire, a gorged snail suck amid the folds, unfurling with desire. Its slick and gleaming trail of pleasure oozing out behind, its rapturous head in worldly leisure, oblivious, petal blind. The broken bud looked jubilant, enravished, vibrant, real, infusing animal and plant with sybaritic zeal. This seeming drive to be consumed as wood lit in a stove must be the lavishest lavishest, most doomed, and pure of earthly love. Come, celebrate the appetite. No science can control the wild, ingenious, slippery blight that incarnates the soul. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so very much, Leslie. Wow, that is.
Thank you, Leslie. Wow.
Thank you.
Thank
Please
you all.
unmute yourselves. Let's applaud. Let's express our thanks. That was really, really fantastic. Really beautiful work.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of our readers. Thanks to Chris, to Brandon, to Leslie. Couldn't think of a better way to sort of close the online portion of the season. Go out on the highest note possible. What an amazing reading from all of you, and also the open mic. It's just really, really tremendous. But we do have some people I know who are here that are in the New York area, so please do also join us on Saturday, May 11th, because we will have 3 features at the Jefferson Market Library in New York in person, and one of them is in fact my esteemed co-host Wendy Sloan, who is here, and it is always such a pleasure to hear her, and also Gerald Wagoner, who you just heard, the open mic, is another feature reader, as well as Walter Ancaro, who is also a fantastic poet and a longtime friend and participant of the series. So hope we see some of you in New York next month, and obviously some of you who are geographically in other places. We'll see you in the fall, and thank you so much again for being part of this, for reading, for listening. It's really, really an honor to be involved in this. So thank you.
And Anton, Wendy, thank you. And thank you to Chris, Brandon, and Leslie for really a terrific, terrific first-class reading. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Anton,
and
Wendy, for
Thanks,
a
Anton.
great season.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.